Bill Duke on the Fishbowl. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time to swim in the bowl with me.
No problem, sir.
Awesome. Well, I'd like to start off by saying that I'm like a huge fan of your work. I've been following your career for a very long time. The first question that I like to ask you is, what got you interested in film?
Well, I started out in theater as an actor and director, and I was always interested in film, but I was intimidated by the equipment, the cameras, the crew, the size of production. So I never tried it until a friend of mine suggested I apply to the American Film Institute. I did, and I got in. And Tony Vellani was the head of the AFI then, and he was a great, great mentor, great instructor, and once I went to AFI, I was hooked. So that's how I got involved.
Awesome, awesome. Um, Now, do you have any favorite films in general?
When you say favorite films in general, what do you mean?
Like what are some of your like all-time favorite films? It doesn't have to be like horror or action or anything, just what are some of your favorite films in general?
Frank Capra is my favorite director. Um, uh, it's a Wonderful Life. Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. Um, I forgot who the German director is, but it's a film called Run Lola Run.
That's a great movie.
He got hardly any credit for that, and it was brilliant.
Yeah, I remember when I was little, they would play that movie on like Cinemax, and I remember staying up late at night and that came on, and I was like just blown away by the cinematography and just the style of how it was shot and everything.
And the way he told the story was brilliant. When the lady was running down the steps, and you moved into the apartment of the older lady watching TV, and it
Right.
showed the lady continue to run down the steps, and when she passed people on the street, it showed their history in a flashback of 3 seconds. It was brilliant.
Yeah, yeah, I really like that film a lot. Um, do you have any other films?
Yeah, the other films that I like, is my favorites, and those are some of my favorite films, like Godfather 1 and 2. Um, and I like some of the Spielberg films, Lucas films. I like the Hughes brothers. Um, I like Malcolm that Spike Lee did. Well, not Malcolm. I'm sorry. What's it called? I can't remember. Anyway, there's a number of directors I like.
Awesome, awesome. Um, Now, I like to ask you about, I guess, your work on Commando.
Okay.
I guess, I guess we could talk about, well, I guess they all kind of connect together, but I wanted to first ask about Commando, and I guess that could go into like Predator and your work with Schwarzenegger and like what was that like?
On both films, I found Arnold to be a total professional, very humble. He worked with the crew and the cast. He had no ego, and he just wanted to be the best films possible. He worked his butt off. He worked hard. And I know Arnold as a friend too. He's a great human being. He has his ego is not a Hollywood type. I'm a big star ego, none of that. And we worked hard. We were in the jungles of Puerto Vallarta, and then we went to Palenque, and bitten by bugs and spiders and fleas and everything else. But we became a team. and it was great working as an ensemble, collaborative ensemble of men in the jungle. So it was great.
That's awesome. Now, Predator is just I mean I consider it like a flawless film in terms of the script
Dominic Kern is a great director.
yes, absolutely. I'm a huge fan of his work, and just the whole tone of that movie from beginning to end, and showing how right off the bat how these group of Marines are just tough hombres, and they show off the muscle and just the size of these guys right off the bat, and then they're immediately thrown into a situation that puts them all on edge. The moment Shane Black's character Hawkins gets killed, and knowing that there's something out there that is not of this world that's hunting you, and you can't do anything about it except fight it with what and I really thought Mac's character in general was really interesting. Just all the characters really had such depth to them.
Thank you. Yeah, I thought the writer did a good job, and I think John, the directing was brilliant. I thought it was a good coming together of a lot of different elements. Joe Silver was the mastermind of this. It's great.
Do you have any like now I heard this story through through watching like special features and stuff because I'm like a huge Schwarzenegger nut. But I know that I've heard Schwarzenegger has like a really like practical joke type personality. Um, was there like some practical joke stuff going on the set of Predator between like Schwarzenegger and Ventura?
I mean, everybody fooled around and joked and kidded, but something that you may not know, that very few people know. The Predator you saw on screen was not the original Predator.
Right, right. It was Jean-Claude Van Damme,
That's
and
right.
I know the story that because I'm a huge Stan Winston fan, and it wasn't it Schwarzenegger who like who called Stan Winston to do the effects because the original Predator wasn't what we saw and know today. It was something different.
Yeah, well, the reason that John Van Damme was fired because he passed out.
Right, right.
He was dehydrated and going through trees and stuff. And Joel said he passed out again, firing 2 weeks by. He passed out again and got fired.
Wow, that's interesting. That's interesting.
The truth.
Yeah. Well, I thought Kevin Peter Hall did a wonderful performance as
He was
the
brilliant.
Predator.
He was brilliant.
Yeah,
He was
he
very
really
brilliant.
made that character come to life, and he was one of my favorite character actors that passed away before his time.
Much too soon.
Yeah, yeah, I loved him in Harry and the Hendersons, and of course Predator 2. I mean, he was fantastic, and a Pittsburgh native.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah. For a little area called Penn Hills. Um, if you ever come to Pittsburgh, that's where he's from. Um, awesome. Well, I guess I'd also like to ask about now you've also worked with Carl Weathers and Sonny Landham on two different films. Carl Weathers with Action Jackson and Sonny with Bird on a Wire. What were those two films like?
Well, Burn the Wire, was no Gibson, right?
Right, right.
Yeah, I mean, working with Mel is great. He's a hard worker too. And people think that he has no ego. He just works hard, man. The great ones like Arnold and Mel Gibson, man, they don't come with any attitude. They just work. And working with Sunday, those couple of great too. He's just a great guy to work with. I've been fortunate to work with people that are serious actors and don't give you any BS. You know what I'm saying?
Right, right. That's awesome.
It's rare in this town, but I'm very fortunate.
That's really awesome. Um, is there any like behind the scenes stories you can tell with Bird on a Wire?
Not really. Only thing with the major thing now, really get trailer to the set because hundreds of women would line up just to get his autograph, and talk to him, or get a picture, whatever. They have security a lot, but women love them.
Right, right. I'm definitely a big fan of his as well. I mean, like I really liked you in Bird on a Wire, but I also really liked you in Payback. Like Payback was like a great movie, and they've been playing that on the movie channels recently, and it's one of
Oh
those
really?
movies that like never gets old. Yeah, they've been playing actually Predator, Payback, Bird on a Wire. So I've like been getting my like Bill Duke like intake, you know. So
Hope I get a
like
residual.
it's yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just a real pleasure to be able to talk to you and tell you how much of a fan I am and how much your work has inspired me because I actually went to school for screenwriting and so many of your characters have just left a big impact on my imagination and everything. So
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thank you, man. I appreciate it. I really do.
absolutely, absolutely. Um, Now you've also worked with a few musicians during your acting and directing career. And I guess the movie that I like to talk about with one of the musicians that I grew up being a huge fan of was DMX. So the film is also stars Steven Seagal and Exit Wounds.
Yes. Yes.
What was your experience on that film?
It was a lot of action, man. It was a lot of action, man. It's like major rehearsals all the time. The stunt guys, coordinators, because the action. A lot as you saw, A lot as you saw, And
Right.
people don't understand how much work it takes to do an action movie. They really don't. So the thing is working with those guys, coordinating everything, plus your line, everything else, and everything else. It's a lot of work. We were very fortunate to have a good director, great stunt coordinators that took care of Some of those stunts are dangerous. As you know. But everybody worked together. So it was great.
Awesome, awesome. Now, what like do you have any stories about DMX on the set?
No, DMX was that DMX was that he was a big star in those days, man. And he just like getting into the acting game, but he had natural talent as an actor. And everybody was surprised how talented he really was. So he was very believable. You know what I mean? He was very believable. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
And
I mean, I grew
and
up listening to his music, and that was the first movie that I was able to go see of his. And I actually, like, the first time I snuck into it because I wasn't old enough to go see R-rated movies. At the time, I was still in like high school, and I saw it a second time with one of my cousins who was older than me, and he took me to see it because he was a big rap fan in the '90s and everything. But like I had tickets to see DMX in Pittsburgh, but unfortunately the show got canceled, so I couldn't relive like my glory days as a high schooler.
yeah,
But I'm sure he'll be in town again.
is he still working and stuff? Is he still working and stuff?
Yeah, I think he's still doing music. He's trying to tour and everything. I'd pay to see him any day of the
Hmm.
week. That's
Hmm.
I'm sure that's a guaranteed awesome
He's very
show.
talented. He's very talented.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, and he was saying, I feel like something about the industry that, a lot of people didn't want to hear and still don't want to hear. And I feel like that's might be why he, has made like an absence as of lately. But, I still listen to his music on a regular basis, and I think he's just a very talented
He's brilliant.
artist.
He's brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, but let's talk about a comedy that you did called National
Right.
Security. Um,
Right.
I thought that film was hysterical. I thought Martin Lawrence and Steve Zahn put on a great like buddy cop routine, and your performance as the chief was
Thank you. The
excellent.
favorite scene that most of you like is the potato chip. Thank you. The favorite scene that most of you like is the potato chip scene.
Yeah, that is my
A lot of
favorite
people like
scene.
that scene. A lot of people like that scene.
Now, was that improvised or was that in the script?
The end was improvised, but the fact that I did give him a chip, but the fact that I did give him a chip was improvised.
That's great. That's great. That really like made the sequence. Do you have any stories about Martin Lawrence and Steve Zahn?
Oh man, talking about action. I mean, you know. Oh man, talking about action. I mean, you know, it was an action comedy. You know what I mean? It was an action comedy. You know what I mean? But both
Right,
guys, you
right.
know, again, I'm say it again, the good but ones. Both they guys, hard, you know, again, I'm say it again, the good ones they work hard. You know, we worked and days and nights, and we worked. It was good days and nights because they were funny. It was good working with them because Martin improvised a lot too, so it was funny to be. Martin improvised a lot too, so it was funny to be on the set with him.
That's awesome. I've loved Martin Lawrence since I think the first movie I was introduced to of his was Do the Right Thing.
Yes. Is he still working these days? Yes. Is he still working these days?
Um, Not as much. I think they're talking about. I read that they're gonna do a Bad Boys TV series, and I think they're still in talks to get. It's like gonna follow Gabrielle Union's character from the second Bad Boys movie, and I think they're in talks to have Will Smith and Martin Lawrence like play cameo roles in it, but the show is going to focus on her character Sid, who's Martin Lawrence's sister
Right, right.
from the second one.
They're fun movies. Right, right. They're fun movies.
Yeah, I really like the Bad Boy movies a lot. I wish they would have done a little bit more with them. I think they just let too much time pass. So a TV show would be great, but I'd love to see the original team come back and do like one last hurrah.
Yes.
Make it like
Yes.
a trilogy.
Be good. Yes. Yes. Be good.
Yeah, yeah, that would be great. Um, let's talk about your directing career. Now you've done two movies that in particular that I'm I'm just really like a huge fan of, and I have some questions about the first. Well, both of them, but the first one in particular, which is Deep Cover. Um, First, like what where do you approach a film from an acting standpoint to versus like a directing
Well, you
standpoint?
know, Well, as a director, you're responsible for the overall vision of the movie. As an actor, you play. As a director, you're responsible for the overall vision of the movie. As an actor, you play your part. But when you read the script and working with Henry, it was like but when you read the script and working with Henry, it was like the film grew. We clicked. We worked together. As a result, it was based on the vision of the film grew. By we worked together, agent, and it was based on a drug enforcement agent. Wrote the book drug enforcement agent. He was very serious. Enforcement agent about wrote the book because he was very serious for the people that were selling about taking drugs off the street. And he wanted to go after the mules for the people that were selling it, the people who were bringing the drugs into the country and growing them. And those were the lawyers, people who were bringing the drugs into the country and growing them. Because of that, those were the lawyers and all of the corporations. And because of that, they fired him. The truth.
Wow, that's crazy.
The
And
truth.
that's
The truth.
just it's unjust. Yeah.
The truth. That's what attracted me to the project. The fact that he rebelled. That's what attracted me to the project. The fact that he rebelled.
Right. That's really interesting. Now, what was it like working with Lawrence Fishburne
It was one of
and
the most,
Jeff Goldblum?
how can I say? It was one of the lowest experiences of my career. Two geniuses that rewarding experiences of my career. You don't just geniuses that you feel what they do. I mean, they go that you don't just you feel what they do. I mean, they go that deep. Anything you ask them to do and do it with organic. And to work with actors that is rare because they have the ability to do it with organic. Brilliant actors, man. And also rare because they have not 100,000% in every scene. They're just brilliant actors, man. And also, it was a privilege. They give not 100,000% in every scene. Privilege working with them. And so it was a privilege. And Clarence Williams III, he's a brilliant actor too. And Clarence Williams III, he's a brilliant actor too. One of my
Absolutely. I love his work as well. He's done some excellent films.
One of my favorite scenes and Lawrence Williams with Jeff Goldblum showing Clarence Williams III. And you shouldn't have done that. And Lawrence Williams, Lawrence Fishburne says because he knows he's going to kill Jeff Goldblum. You shouldn't have done that. You shouldn't have done that. Because he knows he's going to kill Jeff Goldblum.
Right, right. It's the movie is just excellent, through and through, and it has a great soundtrack as well.
Dr. Dre and Snoop.
And I was wondering, because
Dr. Dre and Snoop.
Dr. Dre and Snoop, yes.
That was the first film they ever put music in.
Wow, that's awesome. Now,
They saw
how
the
did
movie,
that
they
come
liked
about?
it, and um, they saw the movie, they liked it, and they liked it, and so we put them together, and it's just the composer, and it just came out, they liked it, and so we put them together, and the way it came out with the composer, and it just came,
And then it came to be. That's awesome. I mean the movie just again through and through is excellent. Like I love those types of movies, like The Undercover Cop, Corruption, you know, um, you know, like those types of
Me too.
movies
I love those
are
movies.
always have been like a big favorite of mine. And you
Me
know,
too. I love those movies. It's
what
hard to say,
would be
man.
your
So many
favorite
in my
like
life.
crime
Hard.
corruption movie?
It's hard to say, man. There's so many in my life. It's hard. I have to pass on that because I can't, should pick one to be honest with you. I have to pass on that because I can't, should pick one to be honest with you.
Fair enough. Fair enough. That was just a spur of the moment question. Um, but I also want to talk about Hoodlum, because that's just another like my dad showed me that movie, and my dad is actually like the guy who got me into like all the stuff that I'm into, and that's when I told him that I was going to be interviewing you. And when I mentioned, that you directed Hoodlum, he was like, "Oh, you gotta find out like the story behind that because he's a big history buff, and I love the whole like Prohibition era type films as well because it's such like a interesting history time period. And the way I view it, kind of like the last of like the Wild West sort of outlaws that were running amok and um, had their heyday, and all met violent deaths, with the exception of Bumpy Johnson, you know. And I was wondering, what was your experience with working with Lawrence on that, and Tim Roth, and
Well,
just
it was a
everyone
great
else
experience.
who
You
was
know, great
uh,
actors.
involved with the
Andy
film?
Garcia, Tim Roth, Lawrence Fishburne. Well, it was a great experience. Leslie Tyson, great actors. Nessa Williams, Queen Latifah, Tim Roth. The list goes on and on and on. Clarence Williams III, Leslie Tyson, Nessa Williams. It was Queen Latifah, a great experience. The list goes on and on and on. Clarence Williams III, based on a true story, Bumpy Johnson, who it was a great experience. Before and the lottery was something called based on a true story, Bumpy Johnson, and the mafia wanted to come to Harlem and take the numbers game of the lottery. There was something called the numbers. And the mafia wanted to come to Harlem and take the numbers over him, and he got his boys together and stopped them. You know, they thought that he was going to run over him, and he got his boys together. They tried to kill him numerous times, and they never could. And the irony is that he died. They tried to kill him numerous times, and they never could in the restaurants. The irony is that he died, and the irony of everything is that at his funeral, there were cars lined around 2 blocks. The irony of everything is trying to get in to celebrate him, and the third of those cars lined around 2 blocks. They respected him that much. Trying to get in to celebrate him, and the third of those cars were mafia cars. They respected him that much.
That's awesome. It's such a
True
cool
story.
little history bit, you know. And like I also know the story of who took over um, after Bumpy
Right,
died, which was Frank Castle, which they made that movie with Denzel Washington,
right,
which
right.
ironically enough had Clarence William
Yep,
III playing Bumpy.
right. It was fun, man. It was hard work, but fun. Yep, it was fun, man. It was hard work, but fun. He's one of the best.
I
He's one
thought
of the
Tim
best. He's
Roth
one of the
just
best.
played, he's
I haven't seen him
he's
do
he's
too much
such an
recently. Did you
excellent
do anything
actor, but he
recently?
really played.
He's one of the best. He's one of the best. He's one of the best.
Yeah.
I haven't seen him do too much recently. Did he do anything recently? The Witch?
Yeah, he was just in Quentin Tarantino's
Oh yeah,
last
yeah, yeah.
movie, The Hateful Eight.
He did that. The Witch?
The Hateful Eight.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. He
That
did
was
that.
pretty good.
Good.
I like westerns, so I like that he's doing like his western tribute at this point. I thought Django was great. The Hateful Eight was really good. Um, and I just love Tarantino's films in general. I think he's a phenomenal writer and director.
Yeah,
Definitely
Tim Roth was
excellent. The
fun to
king
work with,
of
man. He's a great
dialogue.
actor too. Yeah, Tim Roth was fun to work with, man. He's a great actor too.
Yeah, yeah. Um,
Whoopi Goldberg.
Now you also directed Sister Act 2, and
Whoopi
and
Goldberg.
with Whoopi Goldberg.
That's right.
Yes. What what was that like? Because you also had Lauren Hill in there and a young Jennifer Love
That's right.
Hewitt.
We laughed every day on the
Um,
set. I'll tell you that.
what was that experience like?
Because Whoopi's funny, and Whoopi made things we up. We laughed every day on the set. I'll tell you that. You work with Whoopi Goldberg, it's like because Whoopi's funny, she's brilliant. Whoopi makes things up, and she thinks of things on the spot, and you go with it. You work with Whoopi Goldberg, it's like she's brilliant comedian, and she thinks of things on the spot, and you go with it. Big film, and working with her, although
Right.
she was a newbie, she's so talented as a singer and an actress. I think it was her first big film, so it was working with her. Although she was a newbie, she's so talented as a singer and an actress. Challenging, but fun. So it was, Disney. It was fun.
Awesome.
Challenging, but fun. Disney. Thank
Awesome.
you.
Now,
Appreciate it.
now, out of the two Sister Acts, I have to admit, Sister Act 2 is my favorite.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. I just I like the story a little bit more. I think like the first one was really good. I just was a little more I related to The second one a little bit more. Um, and I just thought I'm a huge Lauryn Hill fan. I love the Fugees. And it was just really awesome to like see her in there. And I also grew up, like watching, Party of Five and the I Know What You Did Last Summer movies. So Jennifer Love Hewitt was a big, you know, um, person in my childhood growing up, following and everything. But I loved that movie so much. I thought it was hysterical. It had great outcome, and inspired greatness and you
Thank you.
know
And I think
the kids and
Lauren's trying to make a
everything.
comeback now. I think.
And I just it was really a great film.
Thank you. And I think Lauren's trying to make a comeback now. I think.
Yeah, yeah, maybe I should try and get her on the Fishbowl.
Yeah,
I,
she's
I,
trying to
I
make a tour. I
interview
think.
musicians as well, so I'd love to interview her. That'd be great.
Yeah, she's trying to make a tour. I think.
Yeah, I think she was in Pittsburgh not too long ago, and I found out about it after the fact. So if she comes
Oh yeah,
back,
she's
I'm definitely
talented.
gonna
Very
have
very
to
talented.
make sure I check her out next time.
Yeah, she's talented. Very very talented.
Very talented. Um, awesome. Well, um,
Yes,
I
I
was
have a film
wondering
coming
if you
out
had any upcoming
um,
projects to
that I
promote.
acted in with Nicolas
Yes,
Cage
I
called
have
Mandy.
a
It was
film
just at the Sundance
coming
Film
out
Festival.
um,
Probably come out.
that I
Acted
acted.
in with Nicolas Cage called Mandy. It was just at the Sundance Film Festival.
Yeah,
It'll probably come out. Go ahead.
oh, sorry. I was just saying I
How were the
heard about
reviews?
that, and I was reading the reviews, and I'm very excited to see that.
How were the reviews?
It got some really good responses. They were saying it's one of the
Mm-hmm.
best horror films to come out in a long time. The gore in it is supposed to
Yeah,
be
I'm
really
looking. I
good,
haven't seen it yet, but I'm looking forward to it
and
too. And then
I'm really
I
excited to check
directed
it
a
out.
film called Created Equal, and it's
Yeah,
online.
I
I
haven't
haven't
seen
seen
it
it
yet,
yet
but I'm looking
online, but
forward
it's
to
on
it.
too. And then Netflix. I directed a film called Created Equal, and I enjoyed that. It's online.
Sorry,
Blue Dot check it out online, but it's on Netflix and every place else. So I enjoyed that. He's a great actor. Sorry, Lou Diamond Phillips stars in it.
Oh, awesome! I love Lou Diamond Phillips.
He's a great actor.
Great actor. I thought he was phenomenal in Young Guns, um, and a number of other films. I really like Lou Diamond. I forget what the name of the movie he did, but it was with Charles Dance and
Mm-hmm.
I think Mia Mia Farrow. I think that's her name.
Mm-hmm.
I forget the name of the film, but that was a really excellent movie. I'd have It was an intense
Mm-hmm.
movie, but I know it had
Mm-hmm.
Mia Farrow and
Yeah, I like his
Charles
work.
Dance. I'll have to look it up, but it was really good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like his work. Thanks for having me, man. I
Awesome.
appreciate it.
Well,
Great
Bill, I
questions.
want to
Thank you.
thank you for swimming in the bowl with me. It was a pleasure having
Thanks
you
for
on the
having me, man. I
show.
appreciate it.
Um,
Great questions, and thank you.
Absolutely.
Just let
I
my
didn't get to
assistant know
cover
when it can
everything,
happen.
so I'd love to have you on the show at a future point um, to cover.
Just let my assistant know when it can happen.
Yeah,
All the best, my
absolutely.
friend. All the
Awesome.
best. Thank you.